Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today is going to be a fun one because we are using some paint for today. Now, we are going for a bit of a monochromatic look. Of course, you could choose any color or you could just do a whole mixture of colors. But just for something a little bit different today, I'm going with a few grays and a white. This is the elephant color, medieval color, and white. These are all heavy-bodied acrylic paints from Dina Wakley. Now, I am not going to be doing any masking for this. I just want to do the paint swiping technique. So, I am going to start at the top, and that means that I want there to be a fairly good coverage of dots along the top. If you sort of have a bit of a play around with this technique, you'll get used to what works and what, which results each look provides when it comes to whether you do smaller dots or whether you do longer lines or whether you do, how many different colors and the mixtures that you do. Don't worry if you don't get perfect dots or anything like that. That's one of the reasons why I really like these bottles that they come in. It makes it very easy for just getting those small little amounts of paint. Now at this point I could see I had so much paint left on my little, this is actually a hotel card. But any sort of, those points cards or gift cards or even just a piece of a cardboard is going to work as your swiping tool. But I had a good amount of paint left on there and didn't want to waste it. So actually you can just keep going. And although they are not as crisp results, I would say they're still very usable. Now, as I said, I know that I've chosen to go with fairly, bland, quiet colors, these grays and white tones. But you could do this in, a range of blues or a range of turquoises and greens or, yellows and pinks. And if they mixed up, they would just get oranges. So you'd get a whole lot of beautiful colors. I am very much on purpose going with the grays today just to give that a bit of a go. And of course, a white. I like to make a good solid top line up the top. And then when you add in those little dots, like in between, it actually sort of starts a new streak, if that makes sense. So that does give it a little more interest than just swiping down like I'm doing with the second and third sort of generation swipes. But let me tell you, even with this tiny amount of paint, you can get a lot of coverage. So if you don't have these bottles, then what I tend to do is I just take like a little palette knife or even a like a little cotton bud or something like that, cotton tip, and just dip it into your jar or your pot and you can just pop it down that way. So you can either do it with like a palette knife and dip your palette knife in and dot it down. So where there's a will, there's a way. There's always a way, and these are some of the results that I got. So I want to show you, I made a set of 3 cards today. And I'm going to trim these down. Now, in my head, these aren't perfect. They weren't planned out perfectly. They're not perfectly even. And I'm okay with that because these are, after all, handmade cards, and that's okay. If I wanted it perfect, I would have done some masking. I actually have a video over on my website that's a similar technique, and we used masking for this one. If you want to head on over there, that is natashafootecreative.com, and there are a lot more videos over there, as well as classes and freebie downloads and printables and all sorts. So go and have a little explore. But for this one, I am just sort of doing my best to have ever so slightly more room down the bottom of the paint swipe. And of course, I did these on 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card fronts, just a piece of cardstock. So that gives me the ability to cut these down, a little bit more how I wanted them to go. Whereas, I probably could use a die, honestly, as well. That would work too, but I just get out my trimmer and, as I said, I'm aiming for them to be slightly more like a Polaroid shape, like slightly more up the top with a little bit of space down the bottom where I could perhaps stamp a sentiment. But for these, as you can see, they are very grays and whites and plain and neutral. even though relatively kind of busy looking, because they are quite bold, those stripes on the background. So I'm going to go with die cuts over top of this. There is nothing to say that you couldn't use stamps and experiment with that too. I have got a couple here that I'm thinking of. This is the Cosmos Duo on the left, and then I have Wildflower #1 from Elizabeth Craft Designs. And then thinking about it just beside me here, I have this one called Lily Duo, and again, this could be a good one too. I like these Simon Says stamp flowers because they're really easy to put together. I'm not a big fan of I'm just not very good at them, to be honest. And I don't really have the patience for putting together lots and lots of little beautiful intricate pieces. So that is why I reach for these kinds. I really like ones that, I have to do minimal work to them, but they still look stunning. Does that make sense? I know that's sort of wanting to have my cake and to eat it too, but, I just like the look of these ones in particular. So I have die cut out a few of these, and then I'm going to use a couple of sentiments. I have the Vibrant Sentiments by Gina K. I have the Leaf Canopy, which is an Altenew one. Just going back through some older stamp sets, and I usually, keep them specifically because I really like certain elements or certain designs from them, and they have some really, really solid, beautiful sentiments that are going to fit nicely, just sort of tucked in down the bottom there. Now for these, I'm going to keep these completely white, but I am going to have a little pop of colour. So all of these do have foam tape on the back at the moment. I've just spared you putting all of that on. With the flower petals, I generally have the foam tape on the outside, and then just to give it that sort of extra dimension, I really push down on the center and put glue in the center, hold it there so it can set, and that again gives it that really nice little look of dimension. I'm going to cut this one just a little bit shorter because I feel like there is just a little too much. I wanted the flowers to hit right where the paint scrapings was, and then I'm going to put this on a crisp black matting layer, because as I said, these are pretty monotone at the moment, and you could keep it this way actually, but I quite like the little pop of colour. And then this is of course going to go on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, plain white. I use the Frenchville brand from Spotlight here in New Zealand, and that is a really good value. I used to use the Nina Solar White, and that is very comparable to that. The Nina Solar White was really hard for me to get and expensive for me to ship here to New Zealand, and so I shifted over when a friend recommended the Frenchville brand that I can buy locally, and it is absolutely brilliant. Now at this point, for this first one, I wanted to show you a few different options, but I'm going to use some enamel dots for this one, and I had yellow to begin with, but actually I switched over to a little bit of a peachy kind of colour. Remember, if you're not sure if your enamel dots are going to stick really well, especially if they're at funny angles or, they might be going through the mail, pop a little bit of glue underneath. There's nothing to say that you can't do that. Now for this one, I'm going to use these gorgeous little Cosmos Duo. Now this is probably one of my favourite easy peasy die sets from Simon. I used the Wildflower one from Elizabeth Craft Designs on the previous one. Really, I'm just showing you, go through your stash, see what you've got. There's nothing to say that you could not, if you wanted to do some white heat embossing, do some black stamping, and then heat emboss over top of that, that would give it a shine factor. You could do a whole lot of colours as well. You could stamp the stems in black and then do coloured flowers or petals. Lots of different options here. I've just gone for the die cutting because I really want this sort of monochromatic with that tiny little pop of colour being in the centre of the flowers. And again, this is where we can have a little bit of fun with the colours, because I will end up doing one of the centres blue, and of course not many flowers, if any, have a blue centre, but that's okay because that's our prerogative. We get to decide what colours we'd like to go with. And so for this one, I am going to colour them with some ink, and I just coloured in those little centres. They were part of the die. Again, a really, really easy flower, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. Pop this down onto the card base. I'm using my art glitter glue today. and then pop in those centers that I coloured in with some ink. I'm just going to put these ones nice and flat because the other flowers, the flower petals themselves are popped up on the foam, so I don't need any more foam because I'm not 100% sure if these are going through the mail. This little set I think I will have stick together, but not sure. That depends who grabs it first, I think. Okay, we've got the second one, and then the third one I'm going to do, and you'll see that all of the grey swipes, they're not perfect. The sides and the top, they're not perfectly centered, they're not perfectly straight, and that's okay because again, it kind of is just a background, and we do have to remember that just a little bit. But I'm happy with that, and as I said, if you want it to be more precise, I would definitely recommend doing some masking, or you could indeed just cut out. You could do like a larger sheet of the paint swiping and then cut out the square or rectangle or whatever shape that you want to use as a background. In fact, how cool would that look like in a recessed circle if you had, like a circle die cut and then popped up? Oh, anyway, lots of good options. The brain just could wander if I let it. And then for this one, as I said, this has got a little thank you. I'm going to colour these in gorgeously blue using the tumbled glass distress oxide and then pop these in the centres. So I hope this was a fun one for you today. You should definitely give paint swiping a go. You can use any acrylic paint, cheap and cheerful, doesn't matter, give it a go. I absolutely love the look and result that you get from playing with this technique. So once you stop, be prepared to have a few pieces of paper around you. As I mentioned as well, you can go and check out my website, natashafootecreative.com. I have a ton more videos over there that you can check out. Now, I did just want to mention some final details that I'm going to pop on these gorgeous little projects here. After refilling my clear glitter brush many times with water and getting the most out of it, I finally purchased a refill for it and have filled it back up again, so I could put this on some of the leaves. I could also use some glossy accents if I wanted to. Lots of fun options to just add that extra little bit to these, but I had fun today and I hope that you did too. Let me know if you have tried this technique before in some way or another down in the comment section, and